Last Christmas is a movie based on literally spiritual themes. I'm a spiritual therapy trainer, including spirit releasement therapy, so I'll explain this movie from my professional point of view. Movies can tell meaningful stories that teach spiritual lessons. They can also present oversimplification or misinformation, so I'll break down and examine scenes to separate the fact from the fiction and identify the exaggeration. I'll also look at the movie as a whole because it can be like a relatable case study. It can help us understand the spiritual or therapeutic issues faced by ourselves, our loved ones, or our spiritual healing clients. In a meditative or hypnotic state, many people are surprised how psychic they can turn out to be as they access their inner wisdom to heal. So in this review, I'll share some of my experiences of working with people like Kate as they discover their psychic abilities to communicate with their inner wisdom. This review has full spoilers. Now, I've already given a kind of spoiler by reviewing Last Christmas for my spiritually orientated channel. I almost didn't watch this movie because I went into it thinking it was light entertainment without any spiritual theme or interest. It was marketed as some feel-good Christmas fluff, so as a spiritual person, you might have missed it. The first two acts do appear to be pretty light, but the twist in Act 3 reveals the invisible spiritual dimensions that were at play all along. So Last Christmas is a sleeper spiritual movie. If you haven't seen it, I think it's worth watching. Movies are generally narrative stories of 3 acts. Spiritual therapy follows a similar path. In both, we first learn about the issues a person's facing, then we explore the causes of those issues and come to a therapeutic resolution. The first act, Kate is working in retail where she's a liability to her boss. She'd rather be a performer, but is auditioning unsuccessfully. Her relationships with her friends are strained. They are growing up, but she is not. She continues to drink a lot and has only short-term relationships. She carelessly outs her gay sister and rebels against her strict mother who suffers from depression. So far, this is typical Christmassy light entertainment, right? It is all presented in a light-hearted way, thanks to Amelia's charm. Yet it's still a portrait of somebody having difficulty growing up and having a bit of a meltdown. Someone in Kate's situation might decide they need to stop smoking, reduce drinking, manage stage fright, or deal with their emotions that are coming up in relationships. Getting control of one issue with a hypnotherapist is a start. Even better would be having the insight to go to the core of all these issues with a spiritual therapist. But for Kate, like many others, her pain is still not enough to motivate her to seek assistance. The third act finally forces her to the realization that her issues have core spiritual causes. She has the insight that Tom, who we thought was a living person, is an earthbound spirit. Kate couldn't help herself, and no one could get through to her. It took Tom to trigger her breakdown and her breakthrough. In real life, it's at this point that people finally feel compelled to seek out a spiritual therapist to find out what on earth is happening spiritually and to finally heal the pain. The first big question is this a pure cinematic fantasy? Or could it be based on a true story? In my experience as a spirit releasement therapist, Last Christmas is accurate in some aspects of what real people experience spiritually. But there is some cinematic exaggeration and sanitization. So in real life, someone like Kate could come to someone like me as a spirit releasement therapist and ask, I think I'm communicating with spirits. Am I crazy? What's going on? Has this ever happened in the world before? So when I get asked these questions, I say, let's find out about it. But this kind of thing can happen and we can work with it. People in this situation tend to think it's never happened before in the history of the world and they're totally unique. So we can assure them that it's not as uncommon as they may think and that there is an established process to help work through it. Now, Kate or someone like Kate may interpret the spiritual connection she has as being with a ghost, with a spirit, or with a spirit guide. So now we're getting into some key terms. And it's important to define our terms to understand what we're dealing with and to understand that there are distinctions between what some of these terms mean precisely. As a spirit releasement therapist, for me, Tom is what I would call technically an earthbound spirit. This is the spiritual energy of a person that used to have a human body who has now passed away, but they remain bound to the earth plane. Instead of moving into the light of the spiritual plane, they can then attach to living people. The general principles are accurate and can happen in real life, but the way it happens in Last Christmas is a cinematic exaggeration. So as a viewer, we can ask, can people really think they see and know a person, but then find out they're actually an earthbound spirit? Well, some might argue that this could happen with children when they have an imaginary friend that they kind of think is real and might be an earthbound spirit, but this doesn't ring true in real life for an adult. Kate is very childlike, but it would be so rare for an adult to not be able to differentiate between a living person and an earthbound spirit that this aspect of Last Christmas has to be counted as a device that serves an important cinematic purpose, but as a clear exaggeration of real life. In fact, in real life, the opposite is true. Many people do have a spirit attachment, but they don't even know it. And this is actually portrayed in the movie. Now, it's most likely that Tom attached to Kate at the time of his death, but Kate wasn't aware that Tom, the earthbound spirit, was attached to her until a year later. And again, the fact that she suddenly sees him a year later serves the lyric of the song and the theme of the movie, rather than being concerned about the specifics of what might happen in real life. Now, some people suspect they have a spirit attachment, but they're not sure. They may have experiences in meditation, in dreams, or by observing behavioral or emotional changes in their daily life. So this is very different from thinking that they are seeing and interacting with a real physical person. Now, in real life, a minority of people are aware of their spirit attachment, yet even in these cases, the way they perceive the spirit attachment is less dramatic or cinematic. Some may hear the earthbound spirits as an inner voice, but not get any visuals. Even for those that do get visuals, these can range from fleeting to fuzzy to quite clear. For most people, spiritual regression therapies that use hypnosis to access the subconscious are the first time they get to explicitly and fully communicate with a spirit attachment. This connection is guided by the spirit releasement therapist who can discuss with the earthbound spirit, interview them, gather a lot of the relevant information, and then use this information to move towards a therapeutic resolution. In Last Christmas, this journey takes place organically out in the world. In reality, a lot of the journey will take place while Kate is reclining in a chair in a hypnotic state in a session, where I, as the therapist, interview the earthbound spirit through her, and she relays the answers that she perceives in her mind. Now, this is not very visual or particularly entertaining, so for me, much of this movie is a visual metaphor of her inner experiences. Now, if I was talking with her in real life, the key questions I'd want to ask as a therapist, and the questions that the movie goes on to address, are: how did Tom attach? Why did Tom attach? How do we respond to Tom so that we get to a happy ending for Tom and for Kate? So firstly, how did the earthbound spirit Tom attach? In the movie, the lyric goes, "Last Christmas I gave you my heart," and it takes it very literally. Tom was the heart donor for Kate after he died in a bicycle accident. Now, Tom and Kate did not know each other. They are only linked by this physical organ. There is no need for any physical link. So in real life, is it possible that an earthbound spirit can attach due to surgery? Well, yes, this is possible, but it's not really because the spirit follows their own organ into the other person's body. Anesthetics create a kind of vacancy of our own spirit from our body, and this can create an opportunity for a spirit attachment. But the percentages of time that people have anesthetics and get spirit attachments would be very, very low. There's an important distinction. Spirits have a spiritual body, which is non-physical and non-material. They're not particularly attached to their physical body, and they don't attach to somebody else's physical body. They are a spiritual energy that will attach to the spiritual energy of somebody else. So how do spirits more commonly attach in real life? For Kate, it could be more the anesthetics, but in real life, attachments can also commonly come when someone becomes vulnerable due to taking recreational drugs or alcohol. So in a blackout experience while drunk or on drugs, people essentially vacate the house of their body and leave the door open at a psychic energy level. So this leads us to, why do earthbound spirits attach? In Last Christmas, Tom is unknown to the living Kate. So is it possible that a random spirit would really attach to somebody they don't know in real life? Yes, about half the time the earthbound spirit is unknown to the living in life, but can connect to them afterwards. They only knew each other through the organ donation, which is not needed and would be very uncommon. So the fact that Tom is a random guy is still plausible and can match up in real life. For the other half of the time, the earthbound spirit is known to the living. So the reason for attachment can be that they think that they can help each other, and there is an invitation or request to attach. Now, one or both parties may have positive intentions behind this, but it's my perspective as a spirit releasement therapist that in the long term, none of these reasons really hold up. Ultimately, they both need to heal and move on, and not cling on to each other, thereby preventing the spirit from moving into the light and preventing the human from moving on with their life. Now, there's a distinction I want to make between spirits and earthbound spirits. A spirit only becomes earthbound after they miss their opportunity to go into the light, and there can be a space of days or weeks in which a spirit can stay connected to the earth realm but still not be earthbound. So if you've communicated with a spirit that's died in the last few days or weeks, then that may not be a potential problem. This can be part of a natural releasement process where the spirit reassures you, resolves any unfinished business, then they move on to the light and you have some closure and get to move on with your life. If it gets into months or years and you're still communicating with the spirit, then for me that's excessive, and it's at that stage that people, once they start to fully realize that they come for spirit releasement therapy. Now, in Last Christmas, Tom acts as if he's a known loved one to Kate, and he wants to stay earthbound to help her because of their close connection. Now, for me, in real life, this would make much more sense if they'd known each other in life. A random spirit like Tom can attach to someone like Kate, but the way that he behaves is unusual. I would expect that kind of behavior to be between people that had known each other in life. A spirit becomes an attachment once they miss their initial chance to go into the light in the days or weeks after. So if it's been months or years, the spirit has then become earthbound or stuck. This is usually due to a resistance to letting go, and this is where spirit releasement therapy comes in, to give them another chance to do what they need to do to let go and to go into the light. The moment Tom attached to Kate was Last Christmas. But Kate only realizes she has a spirit attachment 1 year later. In real life, I'd expect a spirit that acts like Tom to appear in the following days or weeks, not 1 year later. So for me, this is not accurate in real life, but it's clearly done to fit with the premise, the lyric, and the title of the movie. In Last Christmas, Tom appears to attach to Kate because he wants nothing else other than to selflessly help her. Now, is this realistic? Well, in real life, most earthbound spirits that don't know the person they're attached to are much less helpful and as pure as Tom. Some earthbound spirits have positive intentions, but unhelpful effects. Some earthbound spirits attach without an invitation, but are relatively neutral. Some earthbound spirits have bad intentions and attach to take advantage of the person and use them to try to continue to satisfy their addictions to drugs, alcohol, or sex through those people. Now, in real life, I'd expect that there's probably another earthbound spirit who's attached to and influencing Kate's higher levels of drinking and sexual activity. The fact that this is not represented in the movie may be a bit of a sanitization. These spirits can have little care for the person's welfare and can be actively malevolent. This can happen in real life, but it may unduly complicate this movie, so it's understandably omitted from this one. So earthbound spirits can range from having positive intentions that are helpful to having negative intentions that can be seriously harmful. Yet the image of earthbound spirits portrayed in Last Christmas is that they are extremely helpful and have pure positive intentions, and for me this is a misrepresentation. The way that Last Christmas presents Tom is that he's actually more like what I'd call a spirit guide. So for me, there's a clear distinction between an earthbound spirit and a spirit guide. This distinction is not made in the movie, but this is interesting because in real life, a lot of people also fail to make this distinction. They get confused between an earthbound spirit and a spirit guide and often think that an earthbound spirit is a spirit guide when in fact it is not. And it can be a little dangerous or unwise to make that assumption or to not be able to distinguish between the two of them. This is one of the reasons people invite earthbound spirits to attach and continue to have them, because they don't really realize they're earthbound spirits and they think they're spirit guides when they're not. Earthbound spirits and spirit guides are two distinct entities. They have differing roles and differing characteristics. A spirit guide did not have a human body recently or at all. Earthbound spirits did. A spirit guide has no personal motivations or desires at all. Earthbound spirits do. A spirit guide has wisdom. Earthbound spirits can appear to be wise, but their very state means they've failed to wisely go into the light, let go, and move on. So for me, Tom is technically an earthbound spirit, but he's presented as if he's some sort of hybrid earthbound spirit / spirit guide, which is essentially non-existent in real life. But in real life, we may well connect with not just Tom, but also Kate's genuine spirit guide, who would then help Kate and Tom both get to the therapeutic resolution or the happy ending of the movie. Last Christmas could have had two spirits. Tom is a genuine earthbound spirit who knew and loved Kate in life, and a spirit guide who helped them both to let go, with Kate growing in her life and Tom going into the light. This composite earthbound spirit / spirit guide, Tom, manages to get this same result. Kate does better in her auditions, her relationships, and her habits, all because she healed the pain at the core that caused all of her issues, thanks to her psychic spiritual awakening. In the end, this film and most therapeutic resolutions come back to love. Tom gave Kate love and taught Kate how to love others, and how to love herself. So while there is some exaggeration, sanitization, and misinformation, Last Christmas overall tells a useful story that is close to a therapeutic story arch that a spiritual healing client would take, but with a few understandable modifications to work in a cinematic context. So tell me in the comments, have you seen, felt, or talked with earthbound spirits yourself? Have you worked with earthbound spirits or spirit guides in spirit releasement sessions or other spiritual therapy sessions? Do you resonate with the energy or the story of Last Christmas? Does it remind you of your own story? Are you a spiritual healer, and does Last Christmas remind you of some of the case studies of your own clients? So if you've got any stories to tell, you can share them in the comments. If you've got any questions about some of the points that I raised in this video or anything that I omitted, ask me some questions in the comments and we can discuss those as well. If you found this video too entertaining, check out my educational videos on YouTube or at my website, the Past Life Awakening Institute. I have foundation courses to learn about hypnosis, hypnotherapy, past lives, spirit releasement, and I have certification courses to gain experience in these fields and become qualified through extensive assignments, and one-to-one video calls that we have taking you through every step of the process. If you're interested in online sessions in past life regression or spirit releasement therapy, check out my website, the Past Life Awakening Institute, to book an online session. Check out some of these other videos that cover past life regression, spirit releasement therapy, between lives therapy, hypnosis and hypnotherapy, all based on other spiritual movies. Thanks so much for watching.